everyone, and welcome to Liquid Liner Notes, a podcast that brings you interviews from the beverage and music industries. I'm your host, Danny, aka Hip Hops on Instagram. For this week's episode, I have one of the founders and managing partners of the Hive Supply, a local Chicago beekeeping supply store, and managers of apiaries across Chicagoland, Naaman Gambill.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on. You might be thinking to yourself, this is a music and beverage podcast. Like, why are you having a beekeeper on here? And I was introduced to you because you have collaborated with Was and Ian. I had tagged you in a post for Was, and you told Ian about me when he was at Four Hands, and he reached out to me, which I was super stoked by at the time and appreciative. So I appreciate that. And you guys also work with Right Cider and some other of the craft beverage companies around Chicago. So that's why I really might have you on. And I think beekeeping is cool. I have I'm very into being environmentally conscious and sustainability and all that stuff. So I love your guys' vision and purpose.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah. No, it's we have a unique opportunity working with some amazing people, and Revolution, Right Cider, and Was, and we're always down to collaborate. I think that's one of the great things about owning a business here in the city of Chicago is to work with other cool people that are doing cool things.
Yeah, we'll dive into that a little deeper a little bit later, like how you collaborate with them and all of that. But first, I wanted to see your fascination with bees and honey. Where did that all begin?
The origin story, as it were. So I grew up on a small family farm, what would be probably called a hobbyist farm by today's agricultural standards. So we had chickens and pigs and ducks, and I was active in 4-H. We had two big gardens that my brother and I were that was like our our sharecropping upbringing, as we would wake up during summer and we would have this list of chores to do, things that need to be picked out of the garden or weeded out of the garden, animals to take care of when we had bees. So that we had 2 hives growing up. Went to Indiana University, became a secondary education teacher.
Was that your degree?
That was my yeah. So I'm an educator by trade, and then my wife got a better contract up here in the suburbs, so we moved up here, and this was right before the Great Recession. We kept, as young teachers, getting let go at the end of the year, and hey, if we've got classroom sizes where we can hire you back, we will. So it was a very uncertain beginning to our marriage and start as professionals. And as we were looking for new teaching gigs, we kept moving closer to the city. So we moved to on the border of Chicago and Oak Park, right on Austin, 442. Shout out Brownstone Apartments there. And we were taking the Green Line all the time. And that's how we found Garfield Park Conservatory. And my wife started volunteering there, which led me to volunteer there as well. And they found out that I was a country kid that was comfortable around bees and all other animals and could educate people about it. And that was back in 2009, 2010. And so I've been beekeeping here ever since.
And do they have their hives on the roof there, or where are they? I haven't kept up to date with how their operation is now, but we had at the time, I think we grew to 15 different hives that we were managing on the grounds of Garfield Park Conservatory. And then I started making some collaborations and partnerships with Shed Aquarium and trying to grow the program, which I really enjoyed. And I really enjoyed beekeeping in different parts of the city. And then, obviously, as Garfield Park Conservatory Alliance is a nonprofit, shout out to Garfield Park Conservatory Alliance, they didn't have the budget to hey, you're not going to allow me to grow exponentially my beekeeping endeavors and ambitions, but, by kind of rolling off and starting off on my own, that allowed for me to. Yeah, and a great combo of your degree in education and your early background professionally and being at a place like that where you can sort of hone your skills taking that education background and then applying it to beekeeping
Absolutely.
while also doing it, for real, hands-on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's good. Were you dealing with a lot of kids and stuff there?
Yeah, we would do open hive demonstrations were a big hit. So I would go in with volunteer beekeepers, and we would inspect the hive and bring a frame of honey to a kid that had probably never had any interactions. And I think that's a big thing of what we do is education and trying to foster this stewardship for conservation. And so to have a kid try honey straight from a hive in the city of Chicago and see, one, bees aren't dangerous, they're not going to attack willy-nilly, and have that amazing experience of tasting just something that's from their neighborhood and so Chicago, so local. I think it's a really cool transformative lesson that I'm happy to say that we can offer and did offer.
And then, so after the Garfield Park Conservatory, is that where the West Side B-Boys?
Actually, before I was looking to make money, and so I had a buddy who helped me get a job with a local distributor. So I was slinging beer for a while, and was a on-premise accounts manager for one of the clusters. And then after doing that for, I think it was 8-10 months, I got a call on Easter Sunday, and it was from this guy looking for a full-time beekeeper that kind of promised me an amazing salary to go do what I was really passionate about, as opposed to chasing those numbers to hit for the cluster.
Yeah.
And that's where I got back into beekeeping after a little 8-month hiatus and went for it.
Nice. And you guys are doing you guys started out with not too many hives, and then so that operation grew, and you guys were doing the whole farmers market scene.
Yeah, and really not a lot of farmers markets at that point with the West Side B-Boy iteration. But then once we kind of got a little bit more focused and were able to put some things together and build the infrastructure, that's when we got back into doing farmers markets and creating those, building. I think we started with 50 hives, and now we're this year we will be around 350, 400.
So did that endeavor just transform into the Hive Supply, or was that
it was
separate?
Kind of a falling out with kind of a muddled business plan, and it was easier to focus on the Hive Supply, which is kind of was my brainchild as opposed to someone else's.
Yeah. And so the Hive Supply itself started in 2016?
2016, yeah. Started in 2016, North Lawndale. Yeah.
And that the vision of that was, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to be an access point for people who are interested in beekeeping in an urban area where you saw that as an opportunity to.
Yeah. Exactly. No, you're exactly right. I after doing all of these classes and teaching a lot of beginning beekeepers, there wasn't a singular store in the city of Chicago that just focused on beekeeping. There are a few hobbyist stores that did a portion of beekeeping, but I wanted to be a greater resource and just be devoted to beekeeping here in the city, in addition to managing contracts and having our own hives as well.
Yeah, so people are able to, you can order online, but you're able to sort of go in the store, check things out, check the materials out and, the supplies and.
Yes, and ask a beekeeper. So, at all times we always have a beekeeper on staff so that you can ask those questions, because, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And we have great staff that have experienced a lot of the trials and tribulations of beekeepers. And if we want bees and pollinators as a whole to succeed, then we need to ask those questions and provide those answers.
Yeah. And so how big is your team now?
So let's see. Now we've got 3 beekeepers, full-time beekeepers. We hired 5 apprentices last summer as well. We've got a full-time store manager, and then a business partner. My business partner and I also do a lot of the business. So I don't know how many that is.
Yeah,
but
no, that's good. That's good.
But every year we hire on apprentices, and we try to hire from another organization that we work with, which is Gary Comer Youth Center on the south side of Chicago. So we try to offer some more learning opportunities, and we pay all of our employees, and starting with our apprentices and interns, Chicago minimum wage of $22 an hour.
Nice. And how did you choose North Lawndale then for the?
We believe that urban agriculture can be an economic engine for here in the city of Chicago. So we wanted to, doing my beekeeping in Garfield Park Conservatory in Garfield Park, and having that west side kind of like connection, we thought North Lawndale was a great opportunity to kind of like set up shop, and wherever we've been, we were at Garfield Park and then North Lawndale, and then now currently in Pilsen. But we want to be a resource for the community. I think that's what I feel more businesses should try to aspire to, is to try to make connections with like the community. And here in Chicago, we have all of these fantastic neighborhoods that we are lucky enough to have bees in many of, and kind of help them out.
Yeah, and I did an online order during the pandemic, and it was when you guys were still on Roosevelt. So I just like pulled in the back, and the lady ran the order out to me.
Yep.
But yeah, I wanted to. I didn't get to go into the storefront because it was pandemic. Everything was closed.
Sure. Yep.
But you guys have. I just wanted to go through. I was looking at your site. You guys have like supplies. You have like a beginner's kit you can buy.
Yep.
You sell you can get actual bees.
Correct.
And then you guys make products from your own apiaries around the city. So you have like honey, and then other kinds of gifts, candles that you guys make from the own wax. I mean, it's really cool, just like that ecosystem that you've developed with like your partner and your team is also like the bees. Like,
yeah,
it's like,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're always trying to kind of like maximize. We don't want to waste anything. So when we take that honey, we're saving all of those wax cappings to create beeswax candles and other things. So yeah, we're very thrifty. We're very scrappy as a business, and we try to make the most of it. And I think it's because we know how tough it is for the bees, and in a bee's life, it'll only create a 1/16 of a teaspoon of honey. So like you get those kind of factoids and stats about bees, and it brings a greater sense of responsibility to like what you're doing in agriculture here in the city. Yeah,
I want just to ask. I don't know. There may not be an answer to this, but so you see out in the market, you see like soy candles. This candle. So a beeswax candle. Are there like benefits for that you know of? Or
I'm so glad you asked. Yes, there are. There are benefits to burning beeswax candles, as beeswax is created by the bees. It's a lipid that they secrete under their abdomen, and unlike a soy or petroleum-based candle, it actually cleanses the air when you burn it. So much like your Himalayan sea salt crystal, right? Like just taking negative ions and dropping them out of the air that you breathe. So which is why they're still used in a lot of places, and especially like cathedrals where there's like priceless works of arts and stuff, and minimal electricity. They still burn beeswax candles because it won't create soot that will go on priceless works.
So like not even. Like, so no soot.
Yeah. I mean, we use just a cotton wick, 100% cotton wick, and beeswax.
So not only purifies the air, but it doesn't like leach more into
exactly.
The air. That's awesome. And then for now, so you guys are obviously able to get the honey and the supplies at the storefront, but are you guys elsewhere in terms of like farmers markets or anything like that?
Yeah, so we last year we did quite a few farmers markets. We're always trying to kind of find new farmers markets that fit in with our schedules. So Wicker Park Farmers Market we were part of last year. South Loop Farmers Market, we're actually doing their winter one, and have done their Thursday and Saturday market for years now. We do kind of one-off markets as well, or a few up in like Peterson Park area. So we cast the net pretty wide in terms of our farmers markets and pop-ups that we go to. and we'll continue to do so. So we're now is the season where you kind of like apply to all of those different farmers markets. So we hope to be in some new ones and offer some different neighborhoods our tasty honey.
Yeah, and the benefits of local honey, speaking of which.
So Chicago has just such amazing honey. Like it's really phenomenal, the product that our urban bees create, which the city should get a lot of the plaudits for, because they have planted a bunch of locust trees and linden trees, which create this really unique, light, floral, blonde honey that is great. And so, we're able to provide that to our customers, and a lot of customers. There's no scientific medical evidence that would support this yet, but a lot of people swear by ingesting local honey, so that will help them with their allergies. As I say, I'm not a doctor, and even if it's a placebo effect, if it's giving you the desired effect, is it that bad?
So, I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's not harming you. Yeah. So how many apiaries, hives do you guys maintain then across the?
So we have over 300 as of last year, and then this upcoming season in 2024, we are going to have probably closer to 400. So we've grown from a handful of clients to now serving most of the Chicago land area. We don't go too far north, but we go as far west as Wooddale. We go as now into Gary, Indiana, and also now into Michigan. So we're in Dowagiac, Michigan, Buchanan, Michigan, and kind of growing more around that southeast side, especially now that I'm more of a south sider. It's just easier for me to kind of pop down there.
Yeah, and there's, so many. I've heard of like breweries and stuff moving to Southwest Michigan because of the fruit trees, and like there's a whole. It's like a perfect symbiotic relationship for bees over there.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to having some amazing different floral sources there that the bees can get after. So in this new apiary that we established in Dowagiac, it's right by a cherry orchard and a raspberry farm. So we got some amazing flavor notes from those floral sources that the bees were able to get to, and we actually took a little bit of honey late in the season, and it is so much darker than what I'm accustomed to seeing here in the city. So we'll have to trace what that nectar source is, but just incredible stuff that the bees create, and it's really a vintage every year. It's something new, it's something different, and it just depends a lot about what the bees have available to them. Yeah,
and there's the whole concept of terroir in wine, and I feel like growing up in Florida, you would see orange blossom honey everywhere.
Yes.
So it is really, again, like some people may think honey is honey, but there's vast differences, and I guess I would ask you how large of a gap, do you see things out in the west suburbs that are completely different from in the city? Is it how geographically how divergent is it in closer quarters?
There, that's one of the reasons that on each jar of honey that we produce or bottle, we don't produce it, we steal it, but we put what neighborhood it's from. So there are people that come to our farmers market table and want to get a specific variety because they like how it tastes. But each year it is different. And back when I was at Garfield Park Conservatory and managing the hives at the Shedd Aquarium, they had this great garden set up there where they had a prolific strawberry patch. And we actually got a strawberry nectar flow, and the bees created this strawberry-esque honey. And it was amazing, and we've never duplicated that. But I think that's kind of like one of the magical things about beekeeping, right? Is that it's going to be great because there's not too many bad honeys that you've had out there, right? But
there's still some mystery.
And I think that's when you can pick up your phone and find the answer to just about anything. To have something that you don't know, that's kind of cool and should be celebrated a bit more. Yeah, for sure.
To go deeper into that, you were mentioning the Michigan honey. You were going to trace back to try to find the elements of it, of why it was darker. how is that just like scientific, like lab type stuff?
Yeah,
or?
we will actually have to like send it into a lab, which I think there's really only about 3 labs in the United States that you can send in a sample that they can trace the nectar source to. And in order for any of our honey to be, well, in order for any honey to be labeled a certain variety of honey, it has to be 51% of that nectar source. So we would have to like test every single variety to get like a specific, which is why we and most beekeepers just label our honey wildflower. That's kind of a catch-all term, which we will continue to do, but we can kind of give you some tasting notes to kind of like point you in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's like cool, like you said, that you are signifying where it's from. So if people are really trying to stick like hyper local for allergies or whatever, they're able to do that. And just, I mean, even beyond that, to have fun and fill their own curiosity with, okay, so I have this honey from Wooddale, and then I have this honey from, you know, more closer to Pilsen, and just to try to do a little scientific experiment on their own.
And you know, kind of back to what you were talking about with the orange blossom honey, I love asking people like where they're from and what was their first experience with honey. Like here in the Midwest, like it's clover honey. Like everybody kind of associates honey with being that super sweet, you feel it in the back of your jaw. And, you know, here in the city of Chicago with that linden and locust honey, it's just such an amazing variety that a lot of people just haven't experienced, because a lot of people just don't understand that, oh, bees can make honey here in the city of Chicago, you know, and kind of open those doors of taste to people as well. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, so some of the apiaries, hives that you guys maintain around the area, are there, I guess, major clients that would like to like highlight, and do those clients typically use the honey, or is that something that you like kind of have a relationship with them to where you guys get it back to sell?
We have a lot of kind of a la carte contracts in that sense, but one of the joys that I get of being a business owner is forming these relationships and collaborations, and giving a premium product in this local honey back to them to see what they do with it. So whether that's, you know, Big Delicious Planet, this amazing catering company on the west side,
which I was gonna tell you this after we were recording, but I'll tell you now. My old neighbor, when I used to live in like the West Edgewater area, Andersonville, she works for Field Notes.
Oh, nice.
And so I know them through Field Notes, because it's husband Field
Jim
Notes.
and Heidi, and
they're great company.
Absolutely. And I mean, Heidi and all of her employees do such an amazing job with that amazing space that you would never know is there on the west side. You know, just literally blocks north of the United Center is one of the best urban farms that you could imagine. And so the honey that is produced there goes back into all of the things that they make there at the store. Beautiful Rind is using it, pairing it with the cheeses that the amazing cheeses that they have.
They have those, like the, not to use a la carte again, but like a la carte pairings for each of the cheeses that they can set up, and they have like the cheese for dinner, cheese for lunch.
Exactly.
It's so delicious. But they have the meal pairing or whatever.
Dude, it's a problem every time we go there. It's just like, well, we got other work to do, but after a couple of samples of these, I don't know if we're gonna get to it today. I gotta mention CH Distillery, who is basically our landlord now, where we moved from North Lawndale to Pilsen. Our building was sold right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was like, talk about a pivot in the business. Like, where are we going to go? Are we really going to try to find a retail space? But Tremaine Atkinson, an amazing owner of CH, like he's like, well, we got space if you want to come hang out basically in our annex, and has gratefully hosted us for the last couple of years there, and we would not be around if it weren't for him. You know, they do amazing things in the restaurant that they have, which is a fantastic restaurant.
I know them from the spirits.
Like everybody knows all the spirits that they do, especially Malort, right? But they also have an amazing restaurant on Randolph downtown. So was that
a relationship that you had already?
We had basically been managing the hives, and you know, they've got a really cool space there. They're on 17th and Clinton, where we now live as well. and we had been they'd been one of our paying customers, and like, hey, how about we do a little barter system? And we said yes, please and thank you. So Tremaine and all of the folks at CH, just they're great neighbors. Yeah,
that's great to hear. So once you have these hives set up on these rooftops or wherever it may be on the facility, how hands-on is it, like, once you get it going?
Sure. Each spot is a little bit different. So like here right beside her, we've got 15 on the roof, and we're here about every 10 to 12 days from about, I'd say, May until about 4th of July. We're here every 10 to 12 days, and we're doing a lot of different things. We're checking on the overall health of the hive. We're checking and looking for signs of swarming, because that's something that we don't want to happen here for one of our contracts. It's a great thing. It means that the hives are doing really well. But oddly enough, people get a little skittish when there's 30,000 bees that are just chilling outside their window. So we try to make sure that we manage that so that it does not happen.
Yeah.
And then, it's a very seasonal thing. So, on days where it's raining, we're not in that hive. So sometimes we come a little bit earlier, a little bit later, depending on the weather.
Yeah. And so, I mean, everyone knows the term queen bee, but so obviously you have to have a queen for each hive.
Correct.
How long is a lifespan of a queen, and sort of what is that transition like once that queen passes? Or
so one of my favorite lessons to teach people in beekeeping is that that moniker of queen kind of gives a sudden inflated importance for it. Of course, a queen is important, but the queen is very much replaceable. It's very much the workers that basically dictate the terms to the queen. And a cool nerdy fact is that honeybees are haploid diploid, so they can take any female egg and turn it into a queen. So a normal queen's lifespan is about 2 to 3 years. In contemporary beekeeping, it used to be 2 to 5 years that honeybee queens would live. But it's much less now, and that just kind of speaks to the difficulties and trials of beekeeping on a global scale, and all the things that the negatives of a global agricultural system where the viruses and pests and parasites that used to be found only in this part of the globe are now basically widespread, globe-wise. Yeah.
And I noticed in a lot of your writings that you were referring to the bees as female. I
Yes.
just didn't know. Is that something that the female bees make, get the pollen to bring it back, or how does that?
So all worker bees are female.
Okay.
And females should make up a good 80%, if not more, of the hive population as a whole, which peaks really around 60,000 to 80,000 in late June. So there should be only no more than 10% of your population should be drone or male population, and then you're one queen.
Yeah. And I noticed, so we were just talking, we're right beside her. On their rooftop, you said they have 15?
Correct.
And then does each of those 15 have its own queen?
Correct.
Or? Okay.
Yep. So each stack of boxes has their own queen, and I'll actually probably be able to, it's 40 degrees or near 40 degrees, so I can peek in and check on the health. I think that's one of the coolest relationships that we have is here with Right Beside Her, as we really grew this into a sustainable model.
Yeah.
Where we started with 5 and now we're up to 15, and the bees just keep producing fantastic honey and making it through the winter, which is very difficult to do in Chicago as a whole.
Yeah, and I was going to jump later, but I think this is a good point to do that. But the seasonality of bees, was that you mentioned you have to go more often May through July, and then because that's sort of when the regrowth begins, and then you kind of hibernate them over winter?
Yeah, so the population of the hive is very much bell curve. So, we start off.
We're in a live place, so if you hear any background music or background noise, it's okay.
No worries.
Yeah.
So starting in the spring, this ball of bees, this cluster, this colony of bees is about softball, maybe hopefully a little bit bigger, and probably only consisting of maybe 25,000 bees.
Yeah.
And then it grows in population, peaking in June, July, as they're collecting all that nectar. And then it starts to taper back off so that they don't have this over large population that would not be able to make it through the winter because there'd just be too many of them that would eat up all the resources.
Yeah, and I guess so. You guys have, and we can talk about the classes in a little bit, but you guys have like a class on how to get beehives, or to, I don't know what the right term is.
A beginning beekeeping class, yeah, for sure. Yeah, like getting started and all of those things, for sure.
When is the time of the year? Is there like a set time of the year that's like, if I wanted to do this, you really need to do it between like these months kind of thing?
Yeah, so yes, there is. And I think that's one of the things, like the seasonality of this hobby is so unique. Like, and I guess like there are other sports, I guess, if you're a tennis player, you're probably only going to go during the summertime, same with golf and that type of thing. But, it really, we really suggest that people start during the wintertime, January, February, take those classes and get organized and get ready to beekeep when the bees arrive in March, April. And then from then on, you're basically active until the weather gets cold enough that there's no flowers blooming. So some years that's October, some years that's, late November, just kind of dependent. And during that wintertime, you're prepping and getting ready to do it all again, and your next move come the springtime.
And with the Midwest, like how divergent is beekeeping across the country? Like, does the Midwest bring its own, obviously the cold, but does it bring its own issues that maybe you wouldn't run across in the Northeast or in the West Coast? Or
Absolutely, yes. So where I grew up in Indiana, 3 hours south in Terre Haute, it is a totally different climate up here. And even here in the city, we've got microclimates depending on, if our beehives are on top of a black roof as opposed to a white reflective roof, So all these, kind of intricacies that are just fascinating for that spicy neurodivergent kid like myself that can fall into those rabbit holes and kind of explore those and why is it this way here and not over at Y. So yeah, I mean, it's some of the things that we have to deal with are I never had to deal with skunks before.
Yeah.
So that is the mammal of ill repute in Chicagoland beekeeping, especially out west in the suburbs where they're a lot more prevalent.
And they just try to eat the honey.
Yeah, they're kind of like.
Winnie the Pooh?
Hungry Hippos-esque. All right, so, yes, Hungry Hippos-esque in skunk form. So we had this apiary around LaGrange, and and I pulled up, got out of the truck, and immediately got stung. I was like, oh, that's weird. That doesn't happen often. And then every time that I would go there in future, the bees were just pissed off, just mad at the world. And let me know about it. So I then noticed that the grass in front of a hive was kind of matted down. So what these skunks do is they get right in front of a hive and they'll scratch the hive and piss off the bees, and then they'll just gobble them up as they come out to attack.
Eat the bees.
Yeah, they actually eat the bees, it's a protein source for them. And so what you have to do is you need to make sure that your hive is elevated high enough that you kind of expose their underbelly, which is not as thick in fur. So you got issues like that. You got yellow jackets that are super prevalent, especially come August time. Is that
like a territorial issue, or what is the issue with the yellow jackets?
Yellow jackets are the insect nuisance that yellow jackets. I like to say, okay, so I'm gonna get on my nerdy beekeeper hat. Yeah, no, it's safe space. So it's kind of like the superhero and supervillain origin story, where they were so way back when, hundreds of thousands of years ago, millennial ago, there was no such thing as honeybees. It is only with the development of angiosperms, or flowering plants, that we see through fossilized evidence that a group of wasps start going to these flowers and start getting food from them. And that's where we have the development of bees. So before then, everything was a wasp. And it kind of seems like there's that's the bad breakup And so the yellow jackets like to go into a hive and maraud these weaker hives, and they'll steal baby bees in larval form to feed their babies, and they will also feed and take the honey that has been collected by the bees themselves and take that back and feed off that as well. So in August and September, you have these what look to be really great hives last time you went in, and if yellow jackets can get in, or if there's a weaker hive, they will decimate both the population and the food stores that they've collected.
That is a wild, like Game of Thrones-esque, like.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a lot of those Game of Thrones or Shakespearean dramas that are going on in a hive. As you know, they can overthrow queen bees and replace them a moment's notice if they don't like her or feel like she's not performing. Or yeah.
And I was reading about like mites even. So, like, did they just like infest like they have like. They take over, eat the bees themselves, kind of thing.
Yeah, so they reproduce these mites. They're like the number one parasite, the enemy number one for beekeepers that all contemporary beekeepers should be treating for the varroa mites. And so they reproduce at a much higher rate than the bees do, and they will, over time, overwhelm the hive. And what we've also figured out, what they do is that they bring in a lot of different viruses by just feeding on the larvae. So you'll have deformed wing virus that the bees haven't formed their wings properly, and you'll see these kind of like what appear to be like torn wings or tattered wings that the varroa have basically led to that hive. So what we have to do as contemporary beekeepers is keep that mite load or mite level in check so it never reaches a critical mass and leads to the overall detriment of the colony. So
to be a successful beekeeper, you need to be super observant and be like a part-time psychologist.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely need a psychologist as
I just meant like the curiosity that you had when you were like, why is this one hive? Why am I getting stung every time I come here? And sort of like understanding.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I dig it, because it's like, it's seeing early in the spring, like I years ago saw this blue pollen that they were bringing in. And it's like, oh, well, that's weird. What would be a blue pollen? And for those of us that live around boulevards or travel by boulevards, you'll see that little scilla, that little blue purple flower that is one of the first ephemeral springtime flowers.
They're beautiful with the yellow, like, whatever, pistils or whatever you call them.
Well, so you've got crocuses and you've got these scilla, and that's where that blue pollen comes from that they're collecting. And you get to, learn about cool, unique environmental things that are going on in your backyard that most people just drive by or pass every day and don't take notice.
Yeah, I love that. So species of bees in the Midwest, you have your honeybees, but like I guess not every bee makes honey.
Correct.
So what is what's the landscape of bees like, and do they compete with each other?
Yeah, so and that's a lot of studies are being done right now. Actually, there's no insect that is studied more than honeybees, and honeybees are part of what accumulate to billion-dollar industries through honey sales and bee sales and commercial pollination sales. So that is to say that honeybees and beekeepers have lobbyists. These native bees that are integral to our ecosystem do not have any representation, which is why it is imperative and most important that we plant those native plants, because those are pollinators that have evolved with these plants and are better suited and equipped to both pollinate and service those flowers. We've got this amazing symbiotic relationship that flowers and bees / pollinators have. So we have to continue to prop that up. So I encourage everyone to provide habitat for native pollinators. So figure out what is native, and if you have the space or can plant it, put it in your backyard or kill that lawn and put those natives out there, because those are the ones that are going to need looked after.
Yeah, that was one of my questions I was going to ask you towards the end. Was somebody may not be willing to take on managing a hive, or but what are we able to do? But planting native species, I always hear, maybe don't rake your leaves right away.
Yeah,
let
leave the
dandelions
leaves.
go.
Leave the leaves. Absolutely. Yeah. And additionally, like, you're right. Not everyone is equipped, has the
Time
and energy to be a beekeeper, right? So that's okay, but be a proponent for bees, and not just bees, but all pollinators. And instead of planting a flower or two, if you can, plant trees. We talked about how Chicago honey is comprised mostly from linden and locust trees. There are 8 different varietals of linden trees. You heard the bell. I got it right. Yep, under the clock. And then there are 2 varieties of locust trees. Both of those trees provide just millions of floral sources per tree.
Yeah.
So, and also help combat, those hot areas of the city by creating some shade as well.
Yeah. And the hot areas of the city. And I know we've kind of been like touching on this throughout this, but the urban beekeeping and just like the importance, because like we've said, you don't always think of like Chicago as being a beekeeping area or something
Right.
where it would be successful, but it is still important to have, be it pollinating or anything.
Yeah,
anything else.
And especially as we see like the rise of urban agriculture and starting to see, USDA starting to support urban agriculturalists quite a bit more, which is great. So that's why we need these pollinators.
Yeah.
That's why Chicago has, a study from a few years ago showed that Chicago has this amazing biodiversity that it offers. And I feel like as Midwesterners, we're a lot more in tune with like some of those agricultural endeavors.
Yeah.
Many of us, even if we're implants to the city, like you don't have to go too far outside of the city to see, a cornfield, soybean field, or pumpkin patch or anything like that.
And someone in your family maybe did it.
Exactly, right? Or like, many of us had gardens in our backyard, or grandma and grandpa had a garden. So, we have a connection, I feel, that probably a lot of New Yorkers or Californians don't have, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it's ingrained and interwoven into our Flatlander heritage.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And the pandemic, I thought about this and I was like, I don't know where to throw this question in there, but you saw people picking up random hobbies during the pandemic because time increased.
Sure.
Did you see a tick up and increase of interest in that during the pandemic? And
We
maybe
did.
You didn't,
we did see a lot of people like wanting to take on those new hobbies, and then we also saw like just an overall increase in production, which was kind of interesting as well.
Well, yeah, I was reading like articles and seeing the photos of like these animals that hadn't been in this area because they were driven out
Sure.
by all the traffic or whatever, and there was no traffic.
Yeah.
So the natural species that were intended to be there thrived.
Yeah, and it's interesting. When we allow nature to do as nature does, it does a really good job.
Yeah, that's good. So the classes you teach, we've talked a little bit about like the beginning beekeeping, and do you have like classes at every level of that? Or?
So yes, we do. We are just recently we're Chicago Public School vendors.
Nice.
Up until 2 years ago, I was still a Chicago Public School teacher, trying to both manage the business and teach.
Oh, wow.
So what I found out is I could not be a CPS vendor until I was no longer a CPS teacher.
Yeah.
A little conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Yep. So decided to kind of give the business a true litmus test and went all in. And after teaching during the pandemic, which was rough on everybody, but I was kind of I wanted to be my own boss and was ready to be my own boss and to really see if this was a business that can make it. So.
And what kind of, I guess, educational events and everything have you been able to do since then? Like, are you like working with the school children and you have like a class at a time? Like,
Yeah,
what kind of stuff?
we're developing our own curriculum that we're hoping to implement into some of the CPS schools and outside of CPS, like different districts as well. So we're in talks currently. Talks are ongoing to start a curriculum at some other school districts. So, we want to get involved in every level, and I love that aspect of being a teacher. And just like in this talk, we've been able to kind of explore and talk about some really cool rabbit holes that we've just scratched the surface with. You know? And I feel like there are so many lessons, both in agricultural lessons, but also just like leadership and management styles. As a beekeeper, you're your own manager, and you're dealing with tens of thousands of employees, with those bees. So there are so many great lessons that we can teach, and I'm comfortable from any age, really. And
the reception's been good from the kids.
Oh, absolutely. Like kids are down. Kids, even when they're freaked out. Like, there's always going to be that one kid that's like, yeah, man, I'm going to touch that frame of honey. I want to eat that honey. I loved when I was teaching. I was at a great school. I was lucky enough to teach at Southside Occupational Academy. Shout out Southside Occupational Academy. And it is a special needs vocational school in Inglewood. And so, being able to tell the kids, wow, you are the only kid in the city of Chicago right now that's eating local honey. I guarantee it, right? No one else is going into a beehive right now and getting able to sample some honey. So, it's those types of experiences that I think are so transformative.
And not only just like the joy on the kids, I'm sure, but the teaching them that bees aren't bad, because some people see bees and they're like I gotta kill it or swat it or whatever. Like they're
the number one lesson is like teaching the difference between a yellow jacket and a honeybee. That thing's black and yellow. It's a bee. It's a honeybee. I'm gonna kill it. It's like actually it's you see it's fuzzy. It's fuzzy because it collects pollen, because it's a honeybee. And those little things like, oh, I didn't know that. It's like, why is this bee going after my chicken? It's like, well, it is not a bee. It's a yellow jacket, and it eats meat. So it's an omnivore. It's all these like things that, if you just take it at base level and a glance, you make these assumptions. And I mean, how many things can you say that about life, where you just where you don't give it the time and energy to actually explore it, and you just take it at the base level and you make that assumption about it, which sometimes, a lot of times, makes us look like assholes. So, do a little deeper dive, guys.
On anything in life. And so I think this was an event that happened a while ago, so you may not be doing anything like this, but I just wanted to bring it up. But you had a honey and cheese tasting at Italy a while back.
Yes.
Is that something that you guys, not necessarily there, but is that something you guys still do or would be interested in?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're interested in talking about bees, talking about honey, hit me up, because I love talking about bees. I love talking about honey, and I love educating people about it. So that was lucky enough to serve on Slow Food Chicago's board for a few years, and that kind of lent itself to the honey tasting at Italy as well. So
you said it was Slow Food?
Slow Food Chicago, yeah. So
is that an organization just like...
Slow Food is an organization, good, clean, healthy, and fair food practices. So check out Slow Food, support Slow Food. They do a lot of cool things. And also... tangentially check out Arc of Taste, where you can find what are those really cool native indigenous foods that we enjoy eating, and if you tried, I think you would really enjoy too. So there's some cool stuff there too.
One little rabbit hole that you're doing the research to interview you that led me down was the requirement in the state of Illinois to register your hives.
Yes.
And it seemed like that was to sort of trace any kind of disease that may break out, but then also to make sure things don't get oversaturated.
You got it.
And with that, I wanted to ask, so you have 15 hives on the rooftop here. What is there a number that's too many, or is it just depend on the surrounding area?
It depends on the surrounding area, and it's kind of like the plight of the commons, right? So when we are going after new contracts, we definitely want to take a look at that kind of what used to be called Drift Watch. That's where you register with the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and you put in your GPS coordinates of where those hives are, and you can have an overall kind of look to see, there's 20 other hives that are within a 3-mile radius of mine. So all those hives are going to be competing for those same resources. So maybe that's not the best place to put those hives.
Yeah, because the bees can travel
3 to 5 miles away.
3 to 5 miles.
Yeah. So you don't want to have too many overlapping territories where you're going to be creating more competition than is necessary.
Because can the flowers run out of pollen in a sense?
They can, it's mostly the nectar that they're trying to collect. But yeah, I mean, you might have to supplementally feed them with either a nectar substitute or a pollen substitute, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's probably not like the most sustainable thing, right? So taking a look at where other beekeepers are on the map and kind of and listening back to those observations, listening and looking on the overall health of the hive. So, the hives that we have managed at Revolution, we're going to start, basically taking off those hives off the roof just because it hasn't been that productive. Oh. And so we're listening to like what the bees are trying to tell us. And, of course, as a beekeeper, you are inherently like inserting yourself into this semi-domesticated animals process. And it's your job to kind of look, listen, and, of course, every hive we have, we want to make sure that it survives. And when they don't, you got to make those judgments. Is that because of beekeeper error, or is it just like, it's just the wrong spot for it, right? Yeah.
Then the whole nature is metal thing.
Yeah, indeed it is, yeah.
You never know. Bringing it back to how I was introduced to you, the use in craft beverage.
Yes.
I just wanted to, so I first learned about you because Mike from was taking spruce tips and steeping it in your honey.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of tree tipper. I was just how did you form relationships like with him? Like how did you get connected if you remember?
I think Mike reached out. So this was when we were over on Roosevelt. And he reached out like, hey, do you have local honey? Sure do. We got, what do you want? He's like, oh, I want to take these spruce tips and put them in honey, and I was like, dude, I don't know anything about that, but go for it.
Interesting process.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And kind of back to what we were talking about, like, you want to do something cool with honey that's never been done before? That's amazing. Let's do it. Go for it. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to introduce you to the world of local beekeeping and provide those sources. So Rev did Honey Jacket. And that
was with your guys.
Yeah, with the honey. Yep. And a CH restaurant uses the honey, I think, in some desserts that they make in their restaurant. We worked with a restaurant, Quixote, for a while. And unfortunately, they closed off California. They're great, awesome crew. And they did some really cool stuff in their cuisine. So we're always interested to see what people are going to do with it.
Yeah. Right beside her. They use the honey to back sweeten.
Yes, which we started. We only did the honey that was produced with those first 5 hives went directly into muzzle bees, and as Charlie has mentioned in his podcast, which you should check out as well. That honey was put into muzzle bees, and the money that was raised from that kind of kicked back to us, and we did a profit share. But now we've been able to grow the number of hives and the production of those hives so that, every bit of honey that they put into their cider comes from the honey right here in Hermosa, which I want that for every contract, right? That sustainable model of all this honey that you're putting into whatever already is a premium product, you just made it better by incorporating other premium products and supporting local businesses and these collaborations.
And cutting down on transportation and all that other stuff that creates madness in the world.
Yeah.
Now, so when you mention honey and craft beverage, I think the natural inclination is to think of mead.
Sure.
Have you come across that at all with your stuff, or is that something?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done a few. Standard Meadery, Second City Meadery are some great local meaderies that people should check out, and we have for the last 5 years, I think, Demon Tavern. Shout out to Demon. They do a mead fest in around the 18th of August, I think, as that's like around National Honeybee Day. And so they'll do a mead fest, and a lot of people will bring in their meads to sample that they're doing their own home meads for. So yeah, those cool little things with mead, and mead's like a funny thing, and because Chicago honey is so light and so delicate, it's not always the best honey of choice.
Yeah.
People like those orange blossom honeys to use with meads, or darker buckwheat honeys and those types of things. Kind of the nuance and delicate nature of Chicago honey is oftentimes lost, which is why Muzzle of Bees that Right Besider makes, I think the elderflower and the light linden honey that is used in it, they just pair so well together.
Yeah. It's beautiful, and it's interesting to think about, like, this honey may be better with this process, and this honey may be better with this process. It's a world you don't really think about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I wanted to jump to your 15 minutes of citywide fame.
Oh.
Where you were called down to the Daily Center. So I work downtown, so like this sort of like hit home for me.
Yeah.
But and I watched the news coverage and everything like that. That was do you think that they just like Googled and found you guys, or how did that?
Okay, so this is a great story. It's a great Chicago story. So we were at Blackstone Hotel, servicing some hives that we just established last year at Blackstone Hotel. Beautiful hotel.
Where is that, downtown?
Downtown.
Okay.
And I was up there inspecting the hives with an apprentice, and I swear to God, every time I'm inside a hive, like my phone goes off, and I always have it on vibrate, and there's that split second of like, ooh, is that a bee crawling up my leg, or is that my phone going off? Sure enough, it's my phone. It's another beekeeper that is calling, and hey, what's up? Oh, I was just seeing if you're going down to collect that swarm of bees by the Daily Center. I was like, oh, I hadn't heard about it. He's like, well, yeah, it's all over the news right now. And and I was like, well, I wasn't, but let me go check it out. And I feel like a lot of Chicagoans have kind of this similar kind of vibe, a similar aspect of like, dude, we're all just faking it until we make it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to throw this up on the wall. If it sticks, great. If not, all right. So we finish up at Blackstone Hotel, drive down to Daly Plaza, and I park right next to the security kiosk and get off, put on my blinkers, and everybody's like, who are you? And I'm like, I've got like my smoker and my hive tool, and I'm just like, I'm a beekeeper, I got this. And someone call beekeeper. And so just kind of like waltzed right up to some very nervous looking folk that were part of the Daily Plaza. And I was like, hey, I'm a beekeeper. You want me to take this swarm of bees away? And they're like, hold on, let me call. And so like they call, and I get whisked up to the 20th floor of Daly Plaza, and they like are breaking it down, and I'm like, I got a $2 million liability insurance. I'm covered there. I've done this before. This is my business. Here's my certificate of insurance, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, great. What are you going to charge? And I was like, here's the best part. I'm not going to charge you anything. You're going to give me a bunch of media exposure. I'm going to go do you a favor. And, maybe you remember my name. The Chicago way, right? Yeah. Rubbing elbows. So, yeah, man, just, and they're like, okay, great. And so then they're like, what do you need from us? Like, I need a bucket truck, because those bees are very high up on top of that tree. So do you know anyone with a bucket truck? So I call my, Park District buddies, and I'm working all my angles, like trying to get a bucket truck. They secure one. They get it down here at around like 4:30, 5 o'clock. And the guy that drove the bucket truck was not a bucket truck operator. And he's like, okay, so here's what you're going to do. And I'm just like, wait, you're not going to do this? He's like, oh, you got it. So I didn't put like learning how to operate a bucket truck on the fly as part of my, but we got like WGN. I can't remember all. Fox was there. Like there's like a couple of different media outlets that were there, and right outside their buildings as well. So it's just like, well, okay, we have said that we can do this. Now we have to. So yeah, getting all the way up to the top, and wind's picking up, and I'm shaking 60,000, 80,000 bees into a box.
And you're not even, I just want to put, like, because I've seen the video, you're not wearing gloves or anything. You don't even have a mask on. Like, you're just like up there.
Well, I mean, I'm lucky enough that like everybody's got different body chemistry. When I get stung, yes, it hurts, but I don't swell up anymore. So and you know, a lot of what we do is education and showing that like bees aren't out to get you.
Right.
So like I feel like that kind of educational lesson has a lot more gravitas when I'm not wearing any beekeeping suit, right?
Like, so you're not like, there's nothing to be afraid of, as you're like completely covered. Yeah.
And super overwhelmed with the fact that like I can't quite get the bees. But yeah, was able to corral them all and find a new home and donate them to another beekeeping organization on the west side, Sweet Beginnings. And
I was going to ask, are you able to just like rehive those?
Exactly.
That's what they're doing, is searching for a new hive.
Exactly. So like a swarm is when a colony is doing so well that it feels like it can split. So just like a cell splits in mitosis. Colony's doing well, let's split and form a new colony. So those swarms that you see have a mated queen, the old queen, along with, you know, a third to half of the colony with them, and they're just kind of chilling, looking for a new home.
So the queen from the original hive goes with, and they appoint a new queen at the old hive?
Yeah, so they've
kinda?
left behind inside the hive some replacement queens that then have to hatch out and do a little battle royale to establish who will be the new queen of that hive. Then that queen has to successfully leave the hive, mate with up to 15 to 50 drone bees, come back into the hive, and hopefully she stays there for the rest of her life for 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, that is pretty intense. So what would be the ultimate goal for the Hive Supply? Like, again, like I asked Charlie when you were standing here, if you didn't have to worry about like monetary things, like what would you love to do? Like, what would be passionate for you?
I would love to travel around the country establishing educational beehives at different schools, and having school districts take on our beekeeping curriculum. I think that would be great. I would love to have a bigger, greater staff that we can do more things. You know, I would love to give all of my employees and myself a raise. You know, I think first and foremost. But yeah, I mean, I really think promoting education, promoting the conservation and stewardship of pollinators as a whole, that is our utmost goal. And again, showing that there is economic opportunity in urban agriculture and giving people employment skills, life skills, and opportunities with livable wages to do that.
Yeah, and we don't have to go too in depth, but like I thought it was cool doing the research. Like when you're talking about the skills, like you're talking about woodworking, like there's like multiple things that go into the beekeeping, where it's not just teaching people, oh yeah, this is how you keep bees. Like you have to build the hives, you have to build, like you're teaching people all of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about beekeeping, is that it is very much like the hub of all of these different spokes of hobbies that you can get into. So a lot of people get into beekeeping because they want their own honey so that they can make their own honey beer or mead. And then from there it graphs to, I'm going to learn these woodworking because like I can just make these boxes as opposed to buy them from someone, which is great, fine, awesome, do that. But then you're like, oh well, I'm now intrigued about like propolis, this other substance that bees collect, and like I guess it's really good for my body if I ingest propolis.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so
recently. It's
just all these different things that bees just kind of lend itself to different rabbit holes to fall into.
Yeah. So on the topic of the bees themselves, I feel like a few years ago there was like a big push, like a big PR push to save the bees, save the bees.
Sure.
I was just curious, like anecdotally or through your own experiences, like what's your vision on that or outlook on that?
Yeah, I think yes, save the bees, but kind of going back to like focus on the native pollinators too.
Yeah.
We can afford lobbyists. We can always tell people the importance of honeybees. But the rusty patch bumblebee that is native to Illinois, that is an endangered species, it doesn't have those lobbyists that are telling us about. And, we get honey out of bees. Those bumblebees, those miner bees, carpenter bees, they're not making any honey for us to consume, right?
Yeah.
So
they're not as like useful to people, so they're less inclined to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, honeybees are super resilient, and they have developed and use us humans as much as we use them. So I feel like we can always improve. The overall health of honeybees is, I would say that it's not on par. Like, we can do better, and I think a lot of it is just like because beekeeping in general has become globalized. Some of our genetics are not as good and well formed as they once were 50, 60 years ago, because it's a bit more diluted of a pool.
Yeah.
We're not getting the best bees as opposed to what we once were.
Less like survival of the fittest kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like it's more of a mass production. How much can you get out, right? So those queen providers are sometimes, not always, but sometimes you have some issues in the lab with an artificially inseminated queen, as opposed to 60, 80 years ago when none of that was going on, right?
Yeah.
It was just like naturally reproducing queens.
Natural selection.
Yeah. So I think beekeeping as a whole, yes, it needs to be propped up to a degree, with both by people and municipalities and government entities that recognize that, like, we beekeepers are farmers too. We kind of get lost in the shuffle because, like, one, we're quote unquote playing with a bunch of stinging insects. So we're like, listen, we're a little off kilter to begin with.
Yeah.
It's just like, you choose to be around stinging animals? Yes. But at the same time, like, the services that through pollination services, what beekeepers provide is integral to our current agricultural system. Full stop.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and again, support native pollinators.
And that includes monarchs, bees,
bats,
else, bats,
birds. They all do their part, and if we do not provide habitat for them, they're going to go away.
Yeah.
The swanny swans, man. Don't forget about the Lorax. I speak for the trees.
Yeah. Sorry, threw me off for a second. All right, so where can people find more info about you? Maybe plug like social media networks, website.
Yeah, the Hive Supply, Instagram, Facebook, www.thehivesupply.com. We are open 4 days a week, but can also deliver. And we have local honey. You can come into the shop. You can actually talk to a beekeeper if you're interested about being a beekeeper. You can see different setups and actually hold materials and kind of get that tangential feel of like, oh, this is how heavy this will be. Okay, instead of this size, I'm going to get a different size.
Yeah.
So come to the store, come check out, talk to Sydney, our store manager, who has a wealth of experience and knowledge of beekeeping, has been a beekeeper here in the city for, I will not say, Sydney can fill in the blank there. A while, yeah. She's got a wealth of knowledge that she can help you out with. And then check us out at Farmers Markets. Again, we're still doing the South Loop Farmers Market off of Roosevelt right now. So if you want to come, we're going to be at every second South Loop Farmers Market, second of the month. Sorry, we'll edit it. The second week of the month, we'll be at the South Loop Farmers Market. And then once we warm up, we'll have more honey and more neighborhoods that you can check out what that honey's like.
Very good.
Also, if you want a tasty pizza, I'll plug Pat Burger's fantastic pizza restaurant, Max and Izzy's.
Yeah.
They have a hot honey pizza that they use our honey. Nice. It is delicious. And if Portnoy would have tried that one, it would have been a straight 10, I'm pretty sure.
I was going to ask if, because hot honey I enjoy, but does adding the chilies affect the honey at all in terms of nutrients or anything, or is it?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't know, but I don't think so. It's just been infused with that, those, what do you call them? I want to say Scoville units, but that's just
Scoville units.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And we kind of touch on this throughout, but you guys are using raw honey, which is kind of what protects the nutrients. It's not pasteurized or anything, and
correct.
That's where I was kind of going with that question. I didn't know if the chilies sort of would affect any of that, but
I don't think
knows?
so. Yeah, honey is a amazing, just an amazing food product to begin with, and super astringent. So it's going to draw those any moisture from other things that are put into it, and kind of add to those flavors for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like there's so much. I mean, you said that honeybees are the most studied insect, but there's like so much. I feel like that's still possible and capable.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the intrigue of the animal. All right, so before we jump into the outro questions, is there anything else you wanted to add or throw out there?
Oh man, anything else that I want to add? I talked about planting trees. I talked about supporting native pollinators. I talked about the importance of being good stewards of the environment and the city of Chicago. I would also say, like, if you know a beekeeper, support those local beekeepers.
Yeah.
If you want to go on a little adventure, go check out Garfield Park Conservatory and see all the amazing things that they're doing. There are so many great organizations and great businesses that are doing amazing things, and maybe it was like kind of a let off from COVID and the pandemic, where we became very happy and content in our houses, which is a great thing, right? You should be happy in your domestic life, right? But at the same point, like, one of the things that makes Chicago so amazing is all these fantastic people that are doing amazing things, that if you just stick to your one, no shade to Lincoln Park, but if you're just in Lincoln Park all the time, you're really not experiencing Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And one of the fantastic capabilities that my job as a beekeeper in the city provides is, like, I get to travel the streets every day, and I get to pop in, like, hey, I've never been into this store before. I'm hungry. Let me go check this place out. Like, be a traveler and explorer of your Chicago neighborhoods as opposed to neighborhood.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. All right, so now we'll jump to the 5 outro questions.
Yes.
Number 1, favorite beverage.
Favorite beverage.
Doesn't have to be alcoholic.
I would say, man, I'm trying to think, like, what the joys of just like a lemonade in the summertime is pretty tough to beat.
Yeah.
I would say that. And then, or lemon pepino.
Pepino.
Oh man, yeah. Give me a little.
I don't know anything about that.
Lemon pepino Gatorade is the go-to Gatorade of choice. So lemon and cucumber in Gatorade form. Beekeeping is very hot, especially on rooftops. So replacing those electrolytes. Shout out Gatorade if you need a sponsor. Lemon pepino is my go-to.
Very good. All right, number 2, a song that everyone should listen to.
Is there also the favorite song question?
This is the what song is going to go on this playlist I've created. It could be a favorite song. It can just be like, this is somebody I think needs more love, or whatever. It could be anything. I
would say that, like, my go-to, if it, kind of like the Desert Island song for me, would probably be Take 5.
Take 5.
Take 5.
You're doing
Dave Brubeck Quartet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Very good. Number 4, favorite place you've had a drink. Oh, sorry. Number 3, favorite concert you've been to.
Favorite concert that I've been to. We were lucky enough when Farm Aid came to Chicago to have a booth and present at Farm Aid, which was awesome. And then, of course, we got like passes, so I had family come up, and we were all at Northerly Island and checked out Mavis Staples.
That's awesome.
Willie Nelson, his son, Promise of the Real. All that was just an amazing experience. Yeah.
That's awesome. And it was like they had a couple of different vendors, and you guys were just fortunate.
Yeah, so we were one of them, and we were like educating local Chicagoans about beekeeping, and yeah, that was great.
Awesome. All right, number 4, favorite place you've had a drink.
Four Moons is and will forever be my Chicago bar. Shout out to Four Moons, who actually buy our honey and use it in their honey mustard. And that was the bar that I watched nearly every game of the Cubs during the 2016 playoff run.
Uh-huh.
I was like down there on the bar, like had my own seat, like that was my bar. Love that place. After I've got 2 beautiful kids and a third on the way with my lovely wife Ashley, and after we leave the hospital, we go to Paulina Meat Market. We pick up some great meat, and then we stop by Four Moons before we head south to go back home and have a drink with everybody there.
Nice.
With the kids, I guess now. And now that I'm on the South Side, I got a Jimmy's Woodlawn Tap. Like if you're a South Sider, that is a staple there for sure.
Very good. All right, number 5, guilty pleasure for music.
There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure.
Right.
Yeah, I know it's all right. But I will say that any band that could have or would be a headliner for a Lilith Fair, I'm gonna dig. Like I grew up on, like, weirdly enough, Katie Lang and Cowboy Junkies and Indigo Girls and, like, all of these, which I dig. So that's kind of my guilty pleasure. Like, give me a Brandy Carlisle song and a cup of coffee, I'm good.
Good to go. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and meet me in the middle here. And until next week, everybody, try some new beer or some new cider and drink or listen to some new music. Cheers.